What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today, we're talking the latest episode of WWE Chronicle, focusing on Goldberg going into his returns at Super Showdown in June and SummerSlam in August. This aired originally after the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view on Sunday. I'm actually watching this before I finished the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, which I did not watch live. I should have my written review of that show up on nextairwrestling.net before Raw starts a little later on tonight. But yeah, Chronicle, very good episode as always. And it's not the usual, coming out of a pay-per-view, going into another. They probably filmed this with the intention of airing it after Super Showdown. But after realizing, okay, we're probably going to bring this guy back for one more match, they held off on it until after SummerSlam, which I appreciated because the Super Showdown match sucked. He didn't outright admit that here, but he does kick off this episode on the August 5th episode of Raw, right beforehand, or right afterward maybe, probably right beforehand. He says to the camera, "I feel like shit, I feel like a failure." Talks about being his own worst critic, obviously coming off that disaster of a match from Super Showdown in June. So this episode of Chronicle takes place from June 4th, from when he came back on that episode of Raw, or I believe SmackDown before Super Showdown, which was that Friday that same week. And then it concludes on August 11th, which is SummerSlam. So we talked about how he never rolled out an in-ring return, or it says that in the graphic before we hear from Goldberg himself. He never rolled out an in-ring return despite saying goodbye to the WWE Universe the night after SummerSlam, or rather WrestleMania 33, when he lost the Universal Championship to Brock Lesnar that night. So he knew that he was done for then, but he knew he would probably come back for another match or two. Then he got challenged by The Undertaker to a match at Super Showdown, so he came back for that. In reality, the match was just advertised out of nowhere for that show because WWE needed a mega main event for Super Showdown, so let's bring out the legends again. He talks about how he felt anxiety the moment he returned to come back to WWE in June, and he feels welcome to be back, but it's a weird experience. But he says this time around, this match is for him. And he loves the fans. He did the last run for the fans. This run is for him. And to prove to himself, he can still go out there and do what he can do best. Can go out there and still be the best be the best Goldberg that he can be. He also talked about how he's back, not for the money, which I'm sure is part of it. He didn't talk about how much money he's making off of this match, which I'm sure is like over $1 million. He said it was really an opportunity to share the ring with someone he's never faced before, that being The Undertaker, and he couldn't pass that up. A guy that they've shared the ring only a few times before, a few times in 2017, and I think that was it. Maybe once previously in like the Royal Rumble, maybe in 2004. But beyond that, he and, no, I don't think Taker was in that Rumble, actually, because he was out at that point. So yeah, maybe not. Goldberg and Taker had never once crossed paths one-on-one in a WWE ring, and this would give them that opportunity, and that's why Goldberg's back, he says. He also questions himself whether he belongs there or not after seeing all the young guys like Kofi Kingston and Rusev, people like that. But to him, he said, after I see Vince, it's like coming back home. I know I belong here. He says that it's something you don't really get out of your blood. It's always there despite how much time you miss from the ring and being out of the ring and whatnot. It's something that's always in your blood. And he said, listen, if it wasn't worth it, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't come back for the process all over again just for the money. Even if they offered me $1 million, whatever it might be, which they probably did for this match, he wouldn't go through the process of getting ready for the match and, going through the mental tribulations, the physical tribulations, everything else that goes along with coming back to WWE. No amount of money would convince him to come back unless it was for that charge, that feeling that he gets every time he goes out there, that rush of adrenaline, so to speak. And he would take that over the money any day of the week. So he talks about the SmackDown promo that he cut on the Tuesday before Super Showdown, addressing The Undertaker, where Taker confronted him before the show went off the air. He said the promo felt good, and he admits he only had 6 weeks to get ready for this match, because although they announced it maybe a month before the show, if only a few weeks beforehand, he found out about it 6 weeks in advance. So maybe right after WrestleMania 35, early May maybe, he found out about the fact that he'd be facing Taker on this show. And, that's how long he had to get ready for the match. But, although it was a scary situation, because usually it takes a lot longer to get ready for an in-ring return like that, he took it as a compliment that WWE thought that he could be ready for that match in time. He feels like he did everything that he could going into the match. He feels like he has no regrets. He did everything physically, mentally, that he could to prepare for that match. So even if he had enough time, he still feels like he would not have been ready as he was for that match with Taker at Super Showdown. He said the last comeback made this one a lot easier because obviously prior to this point, he'd been out of the ring, before 2016 for, a dozen years, from 2004 to 2016. So it was a lot tougher coming back the first time, and they talked all about that in his first WWE 24 episode a few years ago. I think it was late 2017, if I remember correctly. And obviously this time he was only out of the ring for a little over 2 years. His last match being at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando against Brock Lesnar. So 2017 to 2019, not that much difficult. Not really that much harder. But the producer does ask him, how does this run compare to your last one? And he said, it doesn't. They're completely two different runs. It's very, very different. He calls this one a big deal. And he's excited to give those new fans a taste of who the old Goldberg is. Whether it's WrestleMania, Super Showdown, the show doesn't matter. It's a totally different match. It's a totally different run. He's in a completely different place, for better or for worse, than he was the last time he was around in WWE 2 years earlier. And he said it should be very interesting, and he's ready to show the fans, we're two has-beens, I'm only capable of 2 moves, blah, blah, blah. I want to shut those people up. I want to go out there and, show the world what I can do. So, the match goes terrible. He loses. It's not just the fact the match was, it's not only the fact that he lost, it was the fact that the match sucked. And he knew that. He tweeted about it after the fact. He knows it did not go well that day. So he comes back 2 months later, and he said he's back this time to rectify what happened the last time versus The Undertaker. And he says, hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And he said that he put way too much stock into that match at Super Showdown, and He knew that he didn't want that to be his last match. You're only as good as your last match. He knew he did not want that to be his last match. It never was going to be anyway, he says. So I guess, according to Goldberg, he knew he was going to wrestle more anyway. But he wants to rewrite that history. And he wants to, get back to where he was, get back to who he is, and prove to people that he can still be the Goldberg of old without going out there and fucking shit in the bed in a match like he had at, in Saudi Arabia. And he says, it's a long process, but I got to win them back. And it's a lot harder when you're out for many, many years than it is if you're constantly on the road. Like, if you're always in that mindset of being a wrestler and always being on the road and always putting your body through that pain and punishment and just the trials and tribulations and everything else, it's a lot easier. But when you're out of the ring for any period of time, whether it be a few months, 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years, a dozen years, it's a lot harder to get back in the swing of things when you haven't done it in such a long time. Specifically, not only mentally, but your body as well. Again, he says a lot like he said at the beginning of the special, he's always fighting himself. He is his own worst critic. The producer says, is it weird to be back here after winning that amazing match with... Oh, sorry, my phone just went off. Is it weird to be back in the building that you beat Brock Lesnar in 2.5 years ago at Survivor Series 2016, and the fact that it was over in like 45 seconds to a minute and a half? And he says, hey, I want to go in there and beat that time this Sunday at SummerSlam. And he also returns to Raw. They show the footage of that and being backstage and hugging Vince and Triple H, saying that Vince, we missed you. We're glad to have you back, blah, blah, blah. So the Raw return goes well, and the Raw before the pay-per-view. But like he says, he wants to beat that time and do even better and kind of make up for the bad performance he had at Super Showdown. They actually show the Riddle altercation backstage. They actually show the footage of the Matt Riddle interaction at SummerSlam, the one that Matt Riddle talked about on, WWE Watch Along during SummerSlam. That made the rounds. They show the fucking footage on this episode of Chronicle. Absolutely amazing. I thought this was great. And it was the exact same conversation that Riddle, reenacted on Watch Along. It was the exact same conversation, word for word. It was just funny to see it play out. And Goldberg was all, he was all smiles, but he was also probably thinking, listen, kid, I can beat the shit out of you. Don't fucking talk shit about me. When he says, I'm not your bro. He says that a bunch of times. It was amazing. So if anything, seek this footage out. Seek out this special, if only for that footage of Goldberg and Matt Riddle backstage. I thought that was tremendous. And I get... Matt Riddle said they had another interaction that wasn't caught on tape. I don't know if that's true or not, but hopefully it was. We can see it at some point. And hopefully, I would love to see this, actually end in a match, which we all know it won't. But anyway, He said that he didn't pick up a weight for 3 weeks after Super Showdown, probably because he was so disappointed in his performance. For the first time in 20 years, he didn't pick up a weight for 3 weeks. And then he got a call a week and a half later from WWE asking him to come back. So he says nitpicking everything, that's kind of his thing, but it's a blessing and it's a curse because it's gotten him to where he is today. It's also more difficult as you get older to be that way because it's a lot harder to kind of be who you used to be. So he goes in the ring at SummerSlam, squashes Dolph Ziggler within, a minute and a half, 2 minutes this time. I don't think it beat the Brock Lesnar time, but it came close, I'm pretty sure. But he says, I still think that I can go out there and be the best me that I can be. And he says it's part of the healing process. So he comes backstage. We see the clip that they aired from the WWE Day Of special, where he's like, thank you for having me back. And then they show the footage they didn't show on the WWE Day Of special, where he hugs Vince, he hugs Stephanie, or shakes her hand, whatever. He hugs Triple H, he hugs Paul Heyman, who says, I love you. And obviously they're very close. I'm sure it was really cool for Heyman to see Goldberg go out there and fucking kill it and, kind of redeem himself from Super Showdown. We see Goldberg walking backstage. He seeks out Finlay, hugs him, and says, I would not be where I am today without guys like Finlay, who, I'm merely a pawn. I just go out there and do what I'm supposed to do. But if it wasn't for guys like him teaching me the ropes, I would not be where I am today. And he says, hopefully that worked, and hopefully I'm back. And that's how they close out the special. But yeah, really good episode of Chronicle. I love the 24 on Goldberg that they put out a few years ago. Great to see the behind the scenes of this latest return for Goldberg. And I love when they take Chronicles that actually mean something. Like, I love the Ali one, don't get me wrong, but it felt random. They kind of just picked a random dude to focus on going into the next pay-per-view. Or the Ricochet one, which was very uneventful. It was good, but very not newsworthy at all. Unlike this one, I would say. They just kind of pick a random wrestler to focus on going into the pay-per-view, and that's it. Goldberg, there was real meaning behind this Chronicle. The Sasha Banks one was even better because they talked about her mindset coming out of her WrestleMania departure when she left for a few months, coming back, turning heel, changing up her whole game, talking about being depressed and all this other stuff. It was really interesting. This one was kind of along the same lines, so definitely check it out on the WWE Network. Very enjoyable episode of WWE Chronicle. It's a great one, so be sure to check it out on the network at your leisure. As for this video, guys, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Whatever airs after Raw tonight, if there is any new content airing after Raw tonight, I should be breaking down tomorrow here on Network and Chill. Then my latest review of Total Divas Season 9 Episode 2 going up on Friday here on Network and Chill as well. Until then, guys, have a great week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.